Do you like cats? Do you like stories about the zombie apocalypse? Well, then I may have the comic for you. It's always a good time to talk about spooky comics because sometimes the mood just strikes. Today we're going to be spotlighting Feral by Tony Fleecs,
Lore by Trish Forstner and Tone Rodriguez.
Feral is a tale of several kitties, sadly more than two, so we can't make that really low-hanging Charles Dickens joke. It starts off mostly following three, Elsie, Lord Fluffy Britches, and Patch, who find themselves cast out into the wide world after suddenly being taken from their homes. It at first appears that it's playing out as one of those stereotypical, picked up by animal control type tales, but it very quickly turns, as it's revealed that the world isn't quite right, that there's something else going on. And as the reader quickly learns, the animals are becoming feral, or rather, rabid. I'm Sasha, this is Casually Comics, and let's chat horror comics. I don't know why I started to do finger guns there. Feral, time of recording, is an ongoing series that is being published through Image Comics. Since it's ongoing at this moment, it's unclear how the entire thing is set to wrap up, but the first arc is done and the second arc is solicited all the way through. But we shall see what occurs, and the way something ends, the way it wraps up, can alter the experience. So we're just going to be looking at it as it stands, which is time of recording with issue 6 having come out and issue 7 fast approaching for October 30th, 2024, almost in time for Spooky Day. I do tend to prefer to wait to discuss indie titles until they're done, as most of them do have some kind of end point, but also, if you don't talk about the works, then potentially not everybody gets the chance to know about them and check them out, and then sometimes they don't get the chance to reach the end point they want to. Feral plays with a couple of things. Firstly, it's playing with the tropes surrounding the zombie apocalypse subgenre of horror. It's presenting an outbreak as an extreme case of rabies. And then the other hand is playing with those kind of animal adventure tales. And the protagonist being animals functions in a couple of ways. One clever storytelling conceit this allows for is that the story can allow many details to unfold in the background. This is information that the reader can discern, but the characters aren't necessarily aware of. Messages being received on the radio or television broadcasts, things like that. They're bits of information that allow the reader to gain glimpses into the larger world and to just kind of see how big the scope of everything, and it allows there to be an even bigger sense of tension because the reader then knows how many obstacles these animals, these characters aren't even aware of. It increases the sense of urgency and it adds to the stakes. The design work can also add a lot to the concern that one feels for these characters. Style favors a strong Disney influence, but there's also some Don Bluth in there. Just many animation styles that some may be more familiar with as being associated with children's fare. And so you have these cats with this sense of cuteness that also makes one not want to see anything bad happen to them. That and the fact that they're cats. The familiarity in their designs and the fact that one may associate them in some ways with films or content from their childhood can also add to that sense of affection. And just in general, those designs tend to evoke that feeling. Of course, for every Robin Hood and Fox and the Hound, there's a Secret of Nim or Watership Down. But in general, the association with that childhood innocence and this art style is there, and it adds to the tension. This also adds a juxtaposition element to the proceedings. You have these creatures and you have the environment and everything happening, and that contrast can add to some of the feelings of dread. The characters being animals also adds a layer of realism to the proceedings, since the outbreak is meant to be a hyper-aggressive form of rabies. So not only are the animals in a unique bit of danger, because unlike the humans, they don't have the same ways to guard and protect themselves. You already see some people running around in hazmat suits and the like, but also, even though humans can and do get rabies on rare occasion, thankfully, it does make the danger feel more targeted towards the animal participants. All the animals are drawn and posed quite naturally, so they always feel like cats or dogs or squirrels or whatever the animal is. It's a little thing, but it adds to the sense of immersion. Especially if you have pets or dogs, you can recognize certain signs that they're playing with: the flattened ears, the curled lips, the scrunched up raccoon back. Now, rabies as a substitute for whatever causes a zombie outbreak and other things, it varies. It is a solid choice. Rabies is a horrific death, and the fact that the things that they're playing with are just slightly ramped up versions of what actually happens to animals and people is in and of itself a bit disturbing. Personally, rabies has always freaked me out. There's just something about the concept of dying that way, going mad, not being able to drink water, just everything.
The quarantine films were sort of playing with this, but that was a more human-centric outbreak.
And the series also has these definition cards that aren't doing more than just stating the actual symptoms, but they're very ominous. It gives it a more realistic edge that can add to the scary factor for some, but maybe not for others. It has something different that changes up the elements, and it makes up for the lack of undead factor. offended factor for now. These changes also help make certain tropes, like someone getting scratched not mentioning it, easier to deal with, as there's a genuine lack of understanding from some of the pets as to what the risks are, what's happening, and the reader, because this is a real illness that some may be familiar with, what happens if one doesn't get it treated very, very soon, is already primed for the fact that it wouldn't even matter. So you get that sense of suspense and sadness, but without the frustration. The classic, why don't they tell people? If you cared about other people, you'd tell them. Now, since we're getting all this mostly from the cat's perspective, how do they fare as characters? Like human protagonists, they each have their own personalities and backstories that impact how they approach the situation and each other. And there's a lot of character work and angst. From the first issue, they're setting up the idea that there are mysteries as to why certain characters interact the way they do with each other. And as they're revealed, they paint a very different picture as to how each protagonist actually is at their core versus how they appear at the start. Elsie is the cat that gets the most focus, and she's a bit naive but loyal to her friends. Although it's revealed as the story goes on, she hasn't always necessarily been that way. She's one of the focal point characters who doesn't really understand what's happening, and so a lot of things will need to be explained to her. She'll be the one having the struggle accepting what's going on as she has to get tougher as the narrative goes on. It becomes clear quite quickly that this isn't the kind of encounter that all the characters are going to make it out from. And the series does an excellent job of maintaining that tension and raising those stakes. And it's done it so far without having to go towards any really outlandish type of scenarios that press credulity about this happening with cats. The pets just want to get home, but do they even have a home to get back to? In that way, there's almost a play on classic films like Homeward Bound, where pets need to make their way back to their humans and they're sassing each other all the way. Who else remembers and really enjoyed those movies? I love Homeward Bound. Here, the people are dangerous. Can they evade the humans seeking to eradicate infected creatures? Or will they fall victim to those very same rabid animals? The art does an excellent job in distinguishing between the feral animals and the healthy ones. It makes the rabid animals look both scary in terms of how angry and aggressive they clearly are, but also in a bit of a disgusting factor. The frothing at the mouth is particularly visceral with the way that it looks thick and viscous and just, you don't want to touch it. It evokes that sense of wanting to stay back even from the page. Similarly, there's a slight difference between how the animals are presented and the people, and that makes it feel like the worlds are more separate. Again, that kind of contrast between the art style for the animals and then for the rest of the work. But it's not so much that it's jarring, although miles may vary. Some may find that it takes them out of it. The use of cats does a lot to freshen up a well-worn subgenre, even if it plays with many familiar elements. The search for sanctuary, the what if we were the real monsters all along. This series also has a whole bunch of horror homage covers for people who are into that sort of thing. Some of them are very fun. The Dawn of the Dead homage is probably my favorite, not just because the design is cool, but because it's so apt. Some of them would just be really cool posters in their own right, and you could put them up and again, maybe just not explain it to people. They might just think you really like cats. Now, this same creative team did another similar series in terms of MO, Stray Dogs. That one was shorter, one arc, and the pets there were dogs. That one was about pets taken in by a man that one of the dogs realizes is a serial killer who killed their owners and that they must escape. So that was a more self-contained kind of work and had a different kind of horror. It was more claustrophobic. Feral is a more all-encompassing oppressive dread as the danger could come from anywhere. Even the weather is a problem because this is happening in winter. Not all the cats know how to survive outside, as some are indoor cats. Lord has been declawed, so doesn't have the same capabilities as the others. It's a really tense work with different forms of horror layered within, from the more bloody and visceral, though never over the top, to the more situational and at points psychological. It's definitely more than just bad things happen to cute cats. Issue 6 took a break from the action and was more of a breather piece. It dealt with flashbacks of a now infected and hallucinating character, and was fairly heart-wrenching. So the series can pull upon some different emotional beats, and you may find yourself more invested than you initially anticipated. Maybe. Or maybe it won't affect you at all. For of course, it won't be for everyone. Some are tired of zombies no matter what you do to them. And the changes made here may not be enough to entice them. Some may view it as the Walking Dead Kitty Edition, not as a selling point. Some may not be able to stand seeing such cute pets and animals put through the ringer in such a way, especially not when the designs are so reminiscent of well-beloved children's characters. Some may not like the style and find it clashes with the tone. And some may just not be interested or invested. Different strokes for different folks. Stray Dogs is getting plushies. I wonder if this series would get plushies. Plushies won't save them, but they would be cute. If this sounds up your alley, check it out. There's a lot of cool stuff happening on the indie horror scene right now, just on the indie scene in general. If this sounds like it's not up your alley at all, now you know what to avoid. Have you been reading Feral? If so, do you like it? Do you not like it? Does it sound like something you'd be interested in? If you made it to the end, just a note for those interested that I did put my Global Comics link down below because that's where I read it. The app recommended it to me and it was right. It's starting to know me too well. We'll have to change that. I'm gonna have to click on a bunch of random things. This is not sponsored, but if you do want to check it out that way, I do have a discount code that gives you 33% off your membership. It's GCX Casually. I'll leave it down below. You don't have to use it, but it's there if you want to. Please share all of your thoughts. Have you been reading anything spooky? You're gonna check this out. While you're down there, please do all the YouTube things. Like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the bell notification so that you never miss a vid. Thanks so much for taking some time to spend discussing comics with me. I always appreciate it, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye.